Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, December 25th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 65.6 degrees, with a low of 54.3, making for a mild and pleasant Christmas day to enjoy time with loved ones. Merry Christmas, everyone! Coming up, we'll explore the key advancements that propelled North Korea's nuclear submarine program forward, and break down how California's latest legislation is expanding access to in vitro fertilization for millions of families. Plus, other important stories from around the world, including updates on global tech innovations and local community impacts. All this and more on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning. North Korea just showed off what it calls its first nuclear-powered missile submarine. Ethan, walk us through what Pyongyang put out today.
North Korea's state outlet KCNA released photos and a write-up showing Kim Jong-un inspecting a massive submarine hull inside an assembly hall. The timing is important. Those images were published today, December 25th, Korean time. NBC News and ABC News, drawing on Associated Press reporting, say analysts believe it's the Sinpo South shipyard, which is the country's main sub-building site. The last time we saw this boat was March of this year, when only lower hull sections were visible.
So what's different in these new images?
The hull looks largely complete, with most of the external structures in place, and coated in burgundy anti-corrosion paint, according to NBC News. ABC News noted the sheer scale, calling out the implications for underwater stealth if it's genuinely nuclear-propelled. KCNA described it as an 8,700-ton class vessel, a huge jump from the older diesel-electric boats. That size hints at space for serious weapons in a reactor, though we still don't have independent confirmation of the reactor status.
And North Korea is claiming it can launch missiles from under the sea?
That's the pitch. Australia's 9 News reported, citing Associated Press, that Pyongyang calls it a strategic nuclear attack submarine capable of launching ballistic or cruise missiles while submerged. The idea is endurance, months underwater without surfacing, which would make it far harder to track than land or air forces. That's the essence of second strike deterrence, and it's why this worries the United States, South Korea, and Japan.
Did Kim Jong-un say anything specific about the purpose?
He did. He framed the submarine as, quote, epic-making, end quote, for arming the Navy with nuclear capability, and he blasted South Korea's pursuit of nuclear-powered subs as an offensive move backed by Washington. NBC News and ABC News both highlighted his rhetoric about countering, quote, enemy threats, end quote. The images show him with senior officers and his daughter, underscoring the domestic political theater.
How confident are analysts that this is truly near completion?
A South Korean expert, Moon Kyun-sik, of Hanyang University, told outlets including NBC News that subs are built from the inside out. If the external hull is sealed, he said, most major components, engines, turbines, cooling systems, and the reactor are likely already in place. He argued the boat could be ready to launch for sea trials within months, possibly early to mid-2026. That said, groups like 38 North caution that finishing a hull is one thing. Making a quiet, reliable reactor at sea is another.
What would make this a leap compared with North Korea's existing fleet?
Their current star is the Hero Kim Kun-ok, a roughly 3,000-ton diesel-electric sub rolled out in 2023. Nuclear propulsion multiplies endurance and speed while reducing the need to surface. A massive tactical shift. ABC News and 9 News reported the displacement could allow up to 10 vertical launch tubes for submarine-launched ballistic missiles, possibly Pukguksong variants. If true, that would give them survivable nuclear strike options beyond road-mobile missiles.
You mentioned stealth and noise issues. Why are those such big hurdles?
Modern anti-submarine warfare depends on hearing you before seeing you. If your reactor and machinery are noisy, Allied sonar will find you, especially in the relatively shallow, busy waters around the peninsula. 38 North and other analysts note that quieting technology, everything from reactor isolation to propulsor design, is hard to master under sanctions. It took advanced navies decades to get truly quiet. North Korea is trying to compress that timeline.
Where does this program fit in Kim's broader weapons push?
It aligns with the goals Kim laid out at the 8th Party Congress in January 2021, where he listed hypersonics, solid-fueled intercontinental missiles, spy satellites, and multi-warhead systems. ABC News points out that many of those have seen tests since, and this sub-slots into the second strike leg. It's about assuring retaliation, which in theory deters attack. For Pyongyang, it's also a prestige project.
Are we seeing signs at the shipyard that match this story?
Yes, satellite imagery reviewed by 38 North and CSIS's Beyond Parallel has shown large hull sections, some reportedly up to 12.5 meters in diameter, arrive at Sinpo through late 2024 and into this year. They've tracked new construction jigs, a pier extension, and a movable canopy to conceal sensitive work. Those independent visuals, referenced in the Korea Herald and Newsweek, back up that something big is under construction.
Let's talk about outside help. Is Russia involved?
That's the big question. Analyses from 38 North, the Institute for the Study of War, and reporting by NBC News and ABC News cite intelligence suggesting a, quote, tech for troops, end quote, swap tied to the June 2024 partnership treaty between Kim and Vladimir Putin. In that view, North Korea supplies troops and munitions for Russia's war in Ukraine, and Moscow provides critical technology, potentially including nuclear propulsion know-how. South Korean defense briefings, reported by Newsweek and Euromaidan Press in September, went as far as alleging transfers of propulsion modules from decommissioned Russian submarines.
That would be a major violation internationally, right?
Absolutely. The Federation of American Scientists and multiple UN analyses, covered by Channel News Asia, note that UN Security Council resolutions, like 1718, 1874, and 2270, bar military technical cooperation with North Korea. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Nuclear Suppliers Group also restrict reactor technology transfers, especially to non-NPT adherents like North Korea. In May of this year, U.S. envoy Dorothy Shea accused Russia at the Security Council of, quote, egregious violations, end quote.
Do we have any concrete signs of Russian personnel or parts moving?
Open-source sleuths have tracked increased military flights from Russia to North Korea since late last year, reported by outlets like Kyiv Independent and NationalSecurityJournal.org. Maritime publications such as Baird Maritime and Maritime Executive noted suspicious shipping patterns between Vladivostok and North Korean ports like Najin and Sinpo in early 2025. South Korean analysts, including Moon Kyun-sik in the Korea Herald, think Russian engineers likely helped with miniaturization and quieting, even if the reactor was domestically assembled. None of that proves a live reactor in the boat, but it points to outside acceleration.
What do U.S. and South Korean militaries say about the reactor itself?
Officials are careful. South Korea's Joint Chiefs, cited today, December 25th, in local coverage, assessed that a reactor installation is, quote, highly probable, end quote, given how closed up the hull appears and the construction timeline. CSIS has not published heat signature evidence that would show a reactor running, and we haven't seen declassified intercepts that confirm criticality. So the consensus is, the hardware looks real, the operational status is unproven.
How are Seoul and Tokyo likely to respond if this launches?
Expect stepped-up anti-submarine patrols, more P-3 and P-8 flights, and closer trilateral tracking with U.S. forces. Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo already share real-time missile warning. A credible nuclear sub would add an undersea layer to that coordination. NBC News noted doubts about North Korea sustaining this technologically under sanctions, but the images suggest continued progress. Even a noisy nuclear boat forces planners to allocate more resources to watch it.
South Korea's been exploring nuclear subs too. Where does that stand?
During a November summit this year, President Lee Jae-myung pressed then-President Donald Trump for help on propulsion tech, and the Korea Herald reported Trump sounded open in principle. The big hurdles are fuel sourcing, reactor supply, and where and how fast South Korean industry could build safely. Even with U.S. support, that's a multi-year path with political and regulatory obstacles. North Korea's reveal looks aimed at shaping that debate.
There were also missile tests around this time. What happened there?
Yesterday, December 24th, KCNA said Kim oversaw a test of a new long-range anti-air missile toward the Eastern Sea. South Korea's Joint Chiefs detected launches from the East Coast but gave few details, which ABC News and NBC News both carried. It fits a pattern. New naval assets, missile tests, and tough talk bundled together for maximum effect. Pyongyang likes to choreograph these reveals to drive headlines and deterrent signals.
How much of this is propaganda versus real capability?
It's a mix. 38 North and CSIS imagery confirm a real large hole at Sinpo and significant yard upgrades, which is not window dressing. But independent proof of a functional naval reactor is missing, and analysts warn North Korea tends to overstate timelines and performance. Think of it as credible hardware paired with strategic exaggeration to deter adversaries and impress domestic audiences.
If this sub becomes operational, what changes in the region?
A survivable sea-based deterrent complicates any military calculus. It means Allied forces must hunt a nuclear-capable platform that can hide for long stretches, which is expensive and uncertain. It also gives Pyongyang more options in a crisis, potentially raising miscalculation risks. ABC News put it plainly, it would nudge the balance further toward North Korea's favor in any confrontation.
What's the backstory on how fast this came together?
Satellite evidence points to an acceleration from late 2024 into this year, with those big hull sections and a new pier taking shape. The last public glimpse before today was March, when only the lower hull was visible. Now, the exterior looks nearly complete. Moon Kyun-sik told NBC News that suggests internal systems were installed before the hull was sealed, which is standard practice. He thinks sea trials could start in early to mid-2026 if nothing major slips.
And are we seeing any parallels to past North Korean claims?
In the 2010s, Pyongyang floated submarine projects that never fully materialized, and skeptics remember those, as NPR once chronicled in broader coverage. This time, though, independent satellite imagery and the scale of construction give the project more weight. 38 North's analysts stress this isn't a mock-up on a pier. It's a real hull in a substantial assembly hall with associated yard investments.
Legally, if Russia did help, what's the accountability path?
The UN Security Council is the main venue, but it's paralyzed when a permanent member is implicated. The nuclear suppliers group can tighten guidance and membership pressure, and individual countries can impose sanctions. Channel News Asia, citing UN experts, noted that existing resolutions already cover this, so documentation and enforcement become the battle. Washington and Seoul will likely push for more interdictions and exposure.
What's the political play for Kim at home?
It's about legitimacy and leverage. A nuclear-powered sub signals technological prowess and military strength, useful amid economic hardship and UN sanctions. Showing his daughter at key events, as seen in KCNA photos today, is also part of a dynastic narrative. The Washington Post has previously noted how such imagery is crafted to project continuity and control, though today's reporting leaned on NBC and ABC for the immediate details.
Bottom line, what should listeners take away on this Christmas Day?
North Korea wants the world to believe a nuclear-powered, missile-armed sub is nearly ready, and the visuals today are more convincing than past theatrics. Independent imagery backs the hull's authenticity and the shipyard's ramp-up, while experts say sea trials could be months away. But we still lack proof the reactor's running, and that the boat is quiet enough to evade modern sonar. It's a serious development with unresolved technical questions, and it's likely to speed up an already tense naval arms race.
Ethan, thanks for laying it out so clearly.
Always a pleasure, Grace.
California is about to open the door to in vitro fertilization for a lot more people. Chloe, walk us through what this new law actually does.
It's a sweeping change. California's Senate Bill 729 requires large group, fully insured health plans to cover infertility diagnosis, treatment, fertility preservation, and IVF. CalMatters reports it could reach roughly 9 million Californians, making the state the 15th in the country to mandate IVF coverage. Governor Gavin Newsom signed it back in late September of last year, and most of it takes effect 1 week from now, on January 1st.
So who exactly gets coverage starting next week?
The mandate applies to large group plans, which generally means employers with 101 or more workers. Think tech companies, hospitals, entertainment studios, and a lot of other big employers that already offer comprehensive benefits. According to CalMatters, dependents on those plans are included as well. State employees and CalPERS also get access, but their rollout is later, January 1st, 2027, to give administrators time to set up the benefits.
What's different from the old system, and why is this such a big deal?
Previously, California only required insurers to offer optional riders for infertility care, and employers could skip them. Even when riders existed, they often excluded IVF, which is the most effective pathway for many patients. NPR has noted that a single IVF cycle can cost between $15,000 and $30,000 out of pocket, and families can go into debt just to try. This new law sets a floor for benefits and stops plans from carving out IVF as an exception.
What's actually covered under the new rules?
Insurers have to cover up to 3 completed egg retrieval cycles and then allow unlimited embryo transfers guided by medical standards from the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. That's key because many people need multiple transfers to conceive. The Washington Post has explained that medications like the hormones used for ovarian stimulation are included, and so is, medically necessary, fertility preservation, such as egg or sperm freezing for patients facing treatments that threaten fertility. Elective freezing for non-medical reasons generally is not covered.
And what about costs for patients? Are they still facing big bills?
The law requires cost-sharing parity, which means insurers can't layer on higher deductibles, copays, or waiting periods for IVF than they do for other medical services. That should blunt the most punishing out-of-pocket charges, though patients might still pay thousands depending on their plan design. Legislative analysts cited by CalMatters expect average premiums to tick up by about 2%, with roughly $80 million in added costs over the first 2 years for state-covered plans. Advocates say it's a modest trade-off for access to care that can transform lives.
You mentioned advocacy. What kind of push led to this moment?
It was years in the making. A pivotal moment came in 2023 with a class action settlement against Aetna brought by a same-sex couple from Santa Clara County, which led the insurer to extend IVF benefits to LGBTQ+ policyholders nationwide. CalMatters says that case helped build momentum for a broader fix in state law. Groups like Resolve and the California Medical Association then pressed lawmakers to make coverage mandatory and inclusive.
Inclusive how? What's new in how the law defines infertility?
This is one of the most significant shifts. Instead of requiring proof of 12 months of unprotected heterosexual intercourse, the law defines infertility as a person's inability to reproduce either as an individual or with a partner without medical intervention. CalMatters calls that a game changer because it opens access to same-sex couples, single people by choice, and those using donor gametes or surrogacy without forcing them through exclusionary hoops. It treats infertility as a status rather than a failure.
That must change the experience for people who were previously left out. Do we have examples?
We do. CalMatters profiled a Bay Area woman, Megan Mio, who went through multiple failed treatments with her husband and paid over $20,000 because IVF was excluded. She said, quote, "It hurts me at my core," end quote, describing the emotional and financial toll of hormones, retrievals, and dashed hopes. Her story captures why advocates push to make access equitable and timely, not a last resort after a year of proving failure.
Are there still gaps? Who isn't covered under this mandate?
There are notable exclusions. Self-funded employer plans governed by ERISA, common among major Silicon Valley companies, aren't bound by state mandates, so many workers on those plans won't see changes unless their employer opts in. Small businesses with 1 to 100 employees are exempt, though insurers can choose to include IVF in small group offerings. Religious employers can claim exemptions, Medi-Cal is not included, and certain federally regulated union plans are outside the state's reach.
Could those gaps narrow over time?
Possibly. CalMatters notes that advocates expect small group plans to follow the large group market, especially if there's strong consumer demand and federal approval under the Affordable Care Act. And as NPR has reported, state-level moves like California's can set norms that large employers adopt voluntarily to stay competitive in recruitment. We've already seen some big companies offer generous fertility benefits to attract talent, and a statewide mandate raises the floor for everyone else.
You mentioned timing. Why did implementation get pushed to January instead of earlier?
Lawmakers initially targeted July of this year, but they adopted follow-up legislation to move the start to January 1, 2026. Insurers and employers said they needed time to adjust premiums and update systems to process IVF claims, which can be complex. CalMatters says that timeline also helps clinics prepare for more demand, from scheduling to lab capacity.
Speaking of demand, are clinics ready for a surge in patients?
Clinics are preparing. University of California centers and private networks like KindBody are expanding patient education and staffing, according to statewide reporting. The Los Angeles Times has covered how clinics are triaging waitlists and investing in lab equipment, anticipating a wave of newly eligible patients after the first of the year. The aim is to prevent bottlenecks that could delay care.
Let's talk success rates. How effective is IVF these days?
Technology and protocols have improved a lot. ASRM data show average success rates per cycle in the range of 50 to 60% for women under 35, with lower rates as age increases. That's why allowing multiple transfers after up to 3 egg retrievals is so important. Clinically, most patients need several tries. Coverage aligned with medical guidance gives families a better shot without having to ration care based on cost.
What about the emotional side? We hear about financial stress, but the process itself is tough.
It can be physically demanding and emotionally exhausting. The hormone regimens, the procedures, and the uncertainty compound stress, which is why CalMatters emphasize the mental health impact alongside the financial burden. Patients often describe grief with each failed cycle and strain on relationships. By easing the financial piece, the law doesn't erase the hardship, but it reduces a major source of anxiety.
How does California's move fit into the national debate on fertility and reproductive rights?
It's a counterpoint to restrictions elsewhere. This year and last, national outlets, including NPR, reported on Alabama's brief pause of IVF services after a court ruling on embryonic personhood, which sparked bipartisan backlash and fear among patients. Governor Newsom framed SB 729 as part of making California a reproductive freedom state, contrasting it with those moves. The Washington Post has suggested California's model could influence other blue states looking to codify access.
Any pushback here in California on cost or scope?
There's been concern about premiums. Legislative analyses estimate about a 2% increase on average, and some employer groups worry about broader cost pressures in healthcare. But supporters argue the gains outweigh the costs, pointing to long-run benefits like preventing delayed care that can be more expensive. And they note that parity rules keep plans from offloading costs specifically onto people seeking IVF.
What should listeners check on with their own insurance, especially with the new year coming?
First, confirm whether your employer's plan is fully insured or self-funded. Human Resources can answer that quickly. If it's a large group, fully insured plan in California, the mandate should apply for plan years starting on or after January 1, 2026. CalMatters recommends asking about the specifics coverage for 3 retrievals, medication formularies, approved clinics, and how the plan defines medical necessity for preservation. And if you're in CalPERS, Remember, your expanded coverage takes effect in January 2027.
For people on Medi-Cal or in small businesses, are there any options?
There are still pathways, though they're not automatic. Some small group insurers may offer IVF-inclusive plans that employers can purchase, so employees can advocate during renewal. For Medi-Cal, advocates told the San Francisco Chronicle they're pushing for future expansions, possibly targeted at fertility preservation for patients undergoing gonadotoxic treatments. In the meantime, patients might seek financial assistance programs offered by clinics or nonprofits.
How do patients know if they qualify under the new, broader definition of infertility?
The updated definition centers on the inability to reproduce without medical intervention, either as an individual or with a partner. That means LGBTQ+ couples, single-intended parents, and those using donor eggs or sperm can be eligible without the old requirement of a year of heterosexual intercourse. Doctors will document clinical need, and insurers should apply the definition consistently across plans covered by the mandate. CalMatters emphasizes that it's meant to eliminate discriminatory gatekeeping.
Are there limits beyond the number of retrievals, like age caps or embryo transfer rules?
The law ties practice to ASRM guidelines, which evolve with the science. So rather than hard age cutoffs, clinicians use evidence-based criteria for transfer numbers, embryo quality, and patient safety. That approach keeps coverage aligned with best practices and avoids one-size-fits-all restrictions that can reduce success or increase risk. It also gives doctors room to tailor care.
Could this law affect the broader fertility market, like pricing or innovation?
Likely yes. When coverage expands, markets scale up. More patients, more cycles, and more predictable reimbursement bring investment in labs, staffing, and technology. NPR has reported that insurance coverage in other states encouraged clinics to standardize care and adopt new tools more quickly. Over time, that can stabilize prices and improve outcomes, though short-term demand may stretch capacity.
For couples considering IVF now, what's the first step after January 1st?
Start with your primary care provider or OB/GYN for a referral, since many plans require it. Then verify in-network fertility clinics and get a benefits summary in writing, including pre-authorization requirements and medication coverage. Clinics often have financial counselors who can map out timelines and expected costs. The key is to line up medical and insurance paperwork early, because retrieval and transfer cycles are time-sensitive.
You mentioned unlimited transfers guided by clinical recommendations. How does that work in practice?
After a retrieval, embryos can be frozen and transferred in later cycles without another retrieval. ASRM guidance helps determine how many embryos to transfer and when, based on patient factors and embryo quality. The law's promise of unlimited transfers doesn't mean endless tries, regardless of medical advice. It means insurers can't cap transfers below what clinicians consider appropriate. That's a big shift from older policies that stopped after one or two tries.
Any final context people should keep in mind as this kicks in next week?
Two things. First, this is a floor, not a ceiling. Employers and insurers can offer more generous benefits, and some already do. Second, it's part of a larger, evolving landscape. Aetna's 2023 settlement, Alabama's controversy in 2024, and now California's mandate have all pushed fertility care to the center of the national conversation. As of today, December 25th, clinics and insurers are finishing their checklists for the January 1st start, and patients who've waited years may finally get the green light.
A big change for a lot of families, right in time for the new year. Chloe, thanks for breaking it down.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In Honduras, the National Electoral Council declared Nasri Tito Asfora the next president, handing the conservative former Tegucigalpa mayor 40.27% of the vote after a month-long nail-biter of a tally. Salvador Nasrallah trailed by a whisker at 39.53%, with the ruling party's Rixi Moncada at 19.19%. The announcement sparked immediate fireworks, not the festive kind. Opposition leaders rejected the result, Nasrallah alleged fraud, and President Xiomara Castro labeled it an electoral coup. Adding fuel to the political grill, U.S. President Donald Trump's endorsement and aid threats loomed large. A rightward swerve may follow. Asfura signals warming ties with Taiwan over Beijing. Inauguration is slated for January 27, 2026, pending legal challenges and protests. Democracy punched its first direct ballot in more than 50 years in Mogadishu, where residents voted in local council elections across 16 districts. Over 600 candidates chased 390 seats in a landmark shift from the old clan-based system. Nearly 1 million registered, though roughly half received voter cards, proof that a long democratic marathon starts with many sprints. The vote is a proving ground for President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed's universal suffrage push ahead of 2026 federal elections. But the road is mined with politics in peril. The Somali Salvation Forum boycotted the poll, Al-Shabaab blasted it as apostate, and authorities locked down the city, deploying more than 10,000 security personnel to safeguard 523 polling stations. If successful, the new councils will elect the mayor and deputy mayor. In Yemen, Riyadh read the riot act to the Emirati-backed Southern Transitional Council, demanding an immediate pullback from Hadramaut and Mara. Saudi Arabia called the STC's seizure of those oil-rich provinces an unjustified escalation and ordered military camps handed to the Saudi-backed National Shield Forces. A one-week deadline ticks down to December 29, with talk of potential military action or sanctions if the separatists don't stand down. The stakes gush. Hadramaut holds roughly 80% of Yemen's oil, and the STC's grip looks like a pipeline to renewed southern independence. Split-screen warfare looms as coalition cracks could give the Houthis and al-Qaeda room to surge. Bangladesh saw a political homecoming with seismic potential. Tariq Rahman, the BNP's acting chair and son of former Prime Minister Khalida Zia, returned to Dhaka after 17 years in London. Greeted by vast crowds, Rahman stepped barefoot onto the tarmac, lifted a handful of soil, then visited his ailing mother, symbolism you could feel underfoot. An interim government led by Muhammad Yunus overturned several convictions, clearing his legal runway. With elections on February 12, 2026, Rahman's back-in-town bounce could rally the BNP and reshape the race. But the path is perilous. Recent bombings and killings of activists put security and stability on the ballot too. And in Hawaii, a legal tide turned as U.S. District Judge Jill A. Otak denied a bid to block the state's first-in-the-nation climate tax on cruise passengers, paving the way for a January 1, 2026 launch. Act 96 imposes an 11% levy on gross cruise fares, prorated by days in port, expected to net nearly $100 million a year for environmental resilience. The cruise industry and the U.S. Justice Department argued the tax runs afoul of the Constitution's tonnage clause. The judge ruled the public interest outweighs a pause. Appeals are already underway, but for now, the ship has sailed, and other states may be charting a similar course. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with GPT-5, Gemini Pro 3, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.